Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're still waiting on our main guest, Melanie Morrison of BetterCart Analytics. She's hopefully on her way. We think she got stuck in construction because this is, Saskatchewan, Saskatoon in the summertime. These things happen. I'm Merle Massey. I'm the coordinator for the Undergraduate Research Initiative here at the University of Saskatchewan. And what that is, so my office is part of the Office of the Vice President Research, and I'm responsible for helping undergraduate students across the university to have a research experience. So whether that's a classroom-based research experience or whether it's working with a professor in the summer, that kind of thing. One of the programs that I run is the Student Undergraduate Research Experience. It's a co-curricular program, so students can register. I call it SURE. So if ever you hear me saying SURE, that's what it is. The Student Undergraduate Research Experience co-curricular program, students can come to a whole series of webinars and events like this, and some training on whether they take training in their labs, maybe they're taking some lab safety or some ethics training, that kind of thing. That can also be included towards their co-curricular credit. But one of the things that we did is that we know that students, you don't have to be in the College of Edwards to be thinking about maybe building a business or thinking about entrepreneurship. And so we wanted to make sure that we were including entrepreneurship as one of the aspects of kind of a more holistic training experience at the university. And so we included a whole series of entrepreneurship, and they were gifted to us by Research Excellence and Innovation. And we've been very grateful. So last summer they did a whole series, and this summer they've done another series. Some were similar and some were different. And they've all been recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you're watching it on YouTube, go and check out the playlist on entrepreneurship and you'll find them all there. But Alex Hayden is the director of Research. Alex's team has been helping us out with some of that entrepreneurship. Why do you think, Alex, that entrepreneurship is important, even if you're just an undergraduate student, say in agriculture or vet med or, somewhere else, anything other than Edwards?
Yeah, I think that what we don't always think about is that entrepreneurship might mean starting a business, but entrepreneurial thinking is how we lends itself or how we think of innovation in general. So what does it mean to think like an entrepreneur or to have entrepreneurial thinking? Sometimes this, we talk about, risk tolerance. Do we feel like we need to do everything perfectly before we talk about it? Or is it something where, say, what's kind of the minimum perfection, the minimum level of good enough that we can reach before we talk about something? This is unusual sort of sometimes in an academic setting, right? Because we don't teach things unless we're really sure of them, because we're not trying to teach something that we're partially unsure of. We don't publish things unless we're really sure of them and we have data to support it. But from an entrepreneurial thinking perspective, we try to go, often innovation and disruptive innovation happens when we're thinking about something or working with something in a way that we can put out into the world and see what the response is from the world. Because sometimes you hear a lot of definitions of innovation. And I think something that they all have in common that we don't always talk about frequently enough is that something isn't necessarily an innovation because we say it is. It's not innovative because I think this is an innovation. Innovation is about outside of the university, something that goes outside into a market or externally and has impact and meets a need that something else wasn't meeting. Then that's an innovation. So innovation is about the impact of what we do on the outside world. That's where kind of that interface lies. So we sometimes say the market tells you if something's innovative, right? I can take something to the market, and if nobody wants it, it's not really innovative.
Yeah, that's right. Right? You're not really or you're at least definitely not meeting a need. It might be innovative,
right?
But somebody's like, what do I need that for?
Yeah,
windshield wipers on my glasses or whatever.
Exactly.
One of the things, though, you raise an interesting point about research is that we don't do a very good job of talking about the wrong paths and the wrong turns that we sometimes have in research, and that happens to everybody, from undergraduate students all the way up to our senior faculty, who are winning millions and millions of dollars in awards and doing great research. That doesn't mean that every bit of research that you do always works out. And that's something that I don't think we do a good enough job of explaining. And it's one of the things when we get undergraduate students trying to do a research project for the first time and things take a big left turn and they throw up their hands in despair. So I think we need to tell more stories about the oopses and the upsets and the changes and pivots that we have to make, which is something that we're going to talk about today once Melanie hopefully arrives. The second point that you made, though, Alex, that I wanted to kind of raise is that idea of entrepreneurial thinking. There's another side to that. Learning about how the world of business works, just in general, I think it's good for all of us. When we're finished university, the point of university is to get a degree, go get a job, and go, be a working person in the world, right? And whether you become an entrepreneur or you just are in the working world, understanding how the business world works, how a business grows from the ground up, where the idea comes from, where they get their funding, all of those sorts of things, which are things that we've been covering in these modules around entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think the exposure to those topics across different colleges, I'm going to say, or different backgrounds at the university. Again, these are building business thinking, building a business isn't it's not a solo. It's not it's a team sport. Oh, this is what I'm looking for. It's a team sport. And one of the things that we talk about, if you go to incubators, if you go to investor presentations, you're going to hear the concept of not just team, but a multidimensional team. And so that means finding, you're a researcher you're in engineering, you're in computer science. Building a business will require input and team members from other disciplines, right? And we've had quite a few now entrepreneur in this speaker series, in our Opus programming, visits from folks that can kind of tell the story of been there, done that, and perspectives from folks in other, I'm going to say, other verticals of knowledge. And it's often not the person who has the idea for the business that ends up, driving the entire business, because that's not always, they're not always fit for that role. And so when we do that in this student series, when we do it in our Opus discussions, some of the challenge in an entrepreneurial setting and an entrepreneurial thinking is being able to be self-aware or learn the self-awareness to know what your weaknesses and what your strengths are, and how you either hire for or add team members for to complement those things.
Jenna, do you need me?
I do. So I got a hold of Melanie. Unfortunately, she thought I was at one, so she's going to log in on Zoom, if that's all right.
Oh yeah.
And then we'll have a conversation that way. So she's
Sure.
right now.
Merle's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking through the sound on that one. That one might be an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
Let me work on that.
Otherwise, she won't be able to.
She can hear. So is Melanie logged in?
She's logging in.
Okay.
You will have a 5-minute pause in program. If you would like to get a coffee, Starbucks is ready.
All right, and we are back to recording. And Alex, if you have questions for Melanie, now is your time.
Now is the time. Okay, so thanks very much for doing this, Melanie.
My pleasure.
So this is part of, we did a little introduction here, but also Melanie, for you, this is part of a speaker series that our office is doing,
Yes.
also in coordination with Opus, our USask startup incubator, talking to entrepreneurs that have experience within the university, moving outside of the university. And you and I have known each other for a while in this context. And so we just thought that your story and your background would be a super addition to this series. So, Melanie, maybe can you just give us a little your little 2-minute background? Who are you, and what is BetterCart today?
Sure. So, I've been a professor here at the University of Saskatchewan in the Department of Psychology and now Department of Psychology and Health Studies for the last 19 years. So I'm a full professor there in the department and working away on, in the areas of, I'm a social psychologist in the areas of prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination. And along the way, I've always had an interest in business. I've always had, a bit of an eye for it. And then looking at what I was, one of the pain points that I was experiencing personally, coming out of realizing that there's no transparency around food pricing and data for your average consumer. So looking at, what was available for shoppers essentially, and looking at it through a lens of social justice, social class, and the challenges that most people are facing today in terms of shopping and food affordability and food security. So that's really where I started with my notion that this would be, a great idea to put together a web app, and it's called BetterCart.ca. And that's how I was introduced to the world of entrepreneurship, is really building a team around this one mission and goal. About a year in, then we pivoted. We're sitting on a massive data store, so we're now a big data company, tagged as BetterCart Analytics, and we're helping a variety of stakeholder groups in the food supply chain. So food processors, food manufacturers, independent grocers, understand their landscape around pricing, so the retail landscape, and their competitive landscape. So we've become a pricing intelligence company, and we're concerned obviously about providing this data to people that do not have access to any analytics, as well as right on at the start of the food supply chain, so to producers, as they want to know a bit more about what's happening on the retail side. So we're able to provide that information and really guide decision-making, giving people that understanding of data and pricing data specifically in real time, as well as a historical record.
Right. Okay, cool. Can you talk a little bit about you're a professor, you're on faculty, you have those interests that you described. What made you talk about the decision to say, no, I actually think I want to start a business, and what you had to do? We've talked before about the idea that sometimes folks in an academic setting are used to applying for like grants and things like this, and that's what funds their work. And it's different when you want to start a company, and you and I have talked about that before. So talk to us a little bit about that very first, what made you say, no, I need to do this, or I want to do it, and how did you first take that leap?
Yeah, that's a great question, because for anybody in the audience, you may have this fantastic idea. You may have this burning desire to start a company. Many of you in the tech space, and it's probably sitting within you, and it's really, how do you bring that to the fore? How do you take those first steps to get started? And for me, honestly, it was about an 8-year journey to getting there. So, I had small children. I knew that I needed some funds to get started, because there are some government resources clearly, but it's different, as Alex pointed out, than the granting scheme. And so the realm there. And so I knew that I had to put up some personal capital initially. And that took me a bit to get together. It took me a little bit to, and to be honest, it was, I had 3 children, and putting getting some money back from the government every year for that vast amount I had to spend on daycare. And so bit by bit, I was able to put some money together. And then I thought, look, if I don't do this, I don't know what the rest of my life will look like. I'm going to look back and say, why didn't I do this? And also kept my eye on what was happening in the business world. Would somebody else develop this? Would somebody get this to market? And I was petrified. So I threw down and I thought, yes, there's no time like the present. I'm going to start this. I hired my first developer. He's amazing, still with me now my CTO, and have just been building for the last 2.5 years. So it's been a phenomenal experience, but it's getting started. And if anybody in the audience ever needs some assistance around that, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, okay, so like really, I appreciate that. For 8 years, something is bothering you. And so your initial problem, because we talk sometimes about the basics of problem solution and problem solution fit. What is the problem you're solving? What is the solution you're proposing? And who cares about it? So for like 8 years, what's your 10-word problem statement that is just really bothering you?
Okay, it came down, oh, this is so goofy, but it came down to literally, straw that broke the camel's back here was, don't laugh, but Aveeno diaper cream. That was it. It was really a situation where I had made a purchase and I realized that $7.99 a box, and I went to a different store. It was $4.99 a box. That was $18. I bought 6 packages. You have a young child, you're shopping in bulk, all of this kind of stuff. You're never going to get back to the store to return the higher priced item, reshop at the different store. And I thought, this is getting ridiculous. This is enough. So I thought, and originally I thought about drugstores, and we are there now, but and then I thought, no, this is going to be a massive thing. And so we're going to start with the basics. We're going to go into food, and we're going to come from that food security, social impact, social justice stance. And our pivot really is almost a social justice stance as well, because we're helping people, just like we are the consumers, helping people that don't have access to pricing data. In the same realm here, we're helping groups in the food supply chain that don't have access to data and they can't afford it. So this is, the groups predominantly. So I view it as really a value transfer from where we started to where we are now. And, we can stand behind it with a great deal of pride.
Yeah. Okay, so when you had that, you had this original idea. We talk about sometimes like how do you fund a company when you start, right? Because everybody thinks about venture capital and investors, and they're going to give me money to do my thing, right? And so Melanie, and that's why I prompted her, because I've heard this story from her before. She saves your tax return dollars from her child care benefit or whatever, right?
That's determination. Yeah.
Self-funding, right? So we talk about like early days. No one else is going to give you money for your thing until you prove that it's a real problem and that you have a real solution. And we talk about that, sort of friends, family, early, angel funding, but self-funding is often where this all starts. And but so Melanie, so you cannot live with the idea that you see this problem, somebody else might solve it before you do. And so then tell us, so can you talk a little bit about starting out then with that and where you go to learn how to create a company? Do you need team? Do you find services? I'm building towards, you went through an incubator.
So. Yes, exactly. And, I started out, another story here, but I mean, literally I was redoing my mortgage on my house, and my mortgage broker was right beside Women Entrepreneurs of Saskatchewan, WESC. And I thought, wow, that's something, that would be, okay, that's a hub. I understand that. That's good. Then it took me a year to walk through those doors. I happened to be back and I thought, okay, I'm doing this. I decided in April that I was going to start. September, I got back into the city. As everybody knows, the semester kicked off in September and I walked through those doors around September 9th. I decided I'm going to go to WESC. There was an advisor there that said, guess what? The skip the dishes guys are talking tonight at collabs. And so off I went and then learned more about what collabs was, and here I am as the professor, busily taking notes, writing everything down that Chris Mayer was saying. And that's just the way it goes. And so I did that, but then I became aware of their programming. So they have a program that can help people with their ideas. And you're moving at rapid speed here in this idea incubator phase, and it's called co-launch. And you go through that for 4 months. You meet every single Tuesday. That worked out, for my schedule. My teaching was fine around that. So make it work. You put the time in, you do the market analysis and market validation, and you move these pieces forward. There's a lot that comes at you, but nevertheless, you do the time and you do the program work, and then you get to pitch at the very end of it. And if you make the cut through successive stages, then you're on the final stage essentially. And BetterCart ended up winning. So May 29th, we were in, at Innovation Place there, and we received $10,000 to take it to the next level. So that we did. And then that was May. And then I hired my first full-time developer in September. And this was, so how do you do that essentially? Well, it's learning about where potential developers might come from and so I got my first full-time employee from a program called COM IT. And this was somebody that had come from Vietnam and had taught statistics and had a master's in IT at the University of Hanoi. And so he was here in Canada working hard. He had a part-time job doing some geospatial AI work at the university. And he was looking for full-time work and came over right away to BetterCart. And he's been with me here. He's phenomenal. And he does all of our parsing, which is that effort to pull in all of that data. And courtesy of him and his work in intelligence, we have over 4 billion product records and we import 28 million a week.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is. I know it's a lot. So yeah, so we're constantly building, but it's getting those starts and getting involved. And I think, for anybody in the audience, it's great to be touching base with the program co-launch. That's your starting point. If you're more developed, you could check in with collabs. That's the next rung. And then when you're doing very well with your business, then you would go into a program. When you have revenue over 250K a year, up to $1 million, then you're in a program called Co-Lead. And so it's wonderfully set up here. It's accessible. It's very close to campus. And there's a lot of resources that they will put into you if you're a founder that they believe in. And it's exceptional. And it's just fantastic here that we have this connection as well now with Alex, the programming here at the University of Saskatchewan, really going to bring the university to innovation and tech. And this is a really exciting time. So we're in a good place right now, and we've got good leaders.
So Melanie, you remain on faculty at the university. And you and I have talked in the past also about your experience with going to an incubator, trying to start a business, doing a startup, and then how that influences your thinking and your approach in your job at the university. Then, can you talk to us a little bit about, what did you bring back? Or how has that changed how you work and how you teach?
Yes, that's a great question. And initially, you don't see the connectivity as much, necessarily because your head's down so far. And it's like, for any founder out here in the audience, it's like having 2.5 jobs. So you have to hustle. There's a lot of hustle that goes on with it. We take our skills from what we know at the university, our organization, our project management, all of these kinds of things, our supervisory skills, and we can apply them to a company that you're building. But what I realized is that there was a lot that I was learning in the tech sphere and the management around having a company, the corporate mindset, that the understanding of the industry, venture capital, some of the research surrounding venture capitalism and venture capitalists, and then bringing that into the classroom. So this was really good as well. My own technological skills were heightening, so they were becoming stronger. And I was able to advance my students because of my technological background. And there's a lot of twinning now that we can bring into labs, and and I say this as a social scientist, so it was valuable. And even things when I'm talking about, say, stereotyping, we know women in the venture capital space, women-led companies and women founders, they're supported at about 2% of women founders will receive VC money. So it's an uphill battle for a lot of, but transitioning from talking about certain statistics to this is another echelon, this is another realm, and we can pay attention to it, we can learn from it, we can do research around these topics, do experiments and so on. And so this is exciting. So it really has informed the way I've done things, and it's made me better, I would say.
Yeah, so you would be, we talk sometimes in a startups, but we talk often in the startup space about the idea of a sort of a technical founder and a non-technical founders. And so in a STEM setting or here at the university, these are people that are deeply expert in a technical or a scientific vertical, I'm going to say, as opposed to somebody who is versed in skills like a business side skills or communication skills or marketing skills or those kind of. So you would have been a non-technical founder in terms of starting a tech company, right? So tell us a little bit about how that played out for you, and how it continues to play out for you when you have to, you're a CEO of a company that is a tech company, and you have employees that are computer, programmers and developers, and how you build that team, and how that kind of multidisciplinary requirements plays out.
We lost Melanie.
I also like, you guys, the closed captioning says we lost Melanie.
I know.
Which is good. It's really a good thing. I love that we're just like.
Am I back?
Did you hear what I asked you?
Okay. Yeah, so I just caught, Alex, can you hear me again?
Right, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, no, I was
Yes.
talking about sort of being what would be considered a non-technical founder in a
Yes.
tech space. And that might, of course, translate to, a technical founder, like we might have, say, in our Opus program, are like deep experts in science. And so what has been your experience in, sort of expert, like, being a what we consider a non-technical founder in a tech space?
Yes, so that is tricky. That is a bit trickier, I would say. It doesn't mean you can't do it and can't be wildly successful. We know a lot of companies are led by non-tech founders. So then it comes down to, who do you have alongside you? Who do you have who will help you hire great people? Somebody that is screening their expertise. And that's really, really critical. So you need somebody that can provide you, you trust deeply, that can help you hire. You also, have your own sense, right, of whether or not you think you can work with the person, whether you think they have, the communication skills that is needed for a team. A lot of the different skills that a potential employee would come to you with. But the technical side, yes, you definitely want to be seeing. You often go, you know what you're hiring for and the skill set that you need, but reading it on a resume is very different than somebody running them through some sort of coding exercise, making sure that it's sound, if not superlative and amazing, because those, you want to make some smart hires. You don't want to run through a series of developers. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of people that have technological, backgrounds who don't hire as well, so it's interesting, so it doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It simply means that, hey, back yourself up, go talk to some people, find people that you trust, get them on side and help you with the hiring process. There's a lot of expertise out there. Many people in the audience today would have that expertise. So you're going to do, very well in that regard. If you don't just have that backing and get that support, get the right people in, and you'll fly.
Melanie, what's something that you know now? So you won money at the incubator at Collabs there in 2018?
2019, yeah.
2019.
Yeah.
So what is something that you know now that you've learned since then that you really, some key things that you wish that you knew then?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So one of the things professors are notorious for is, possibly not, at the university we work, we have HR handles things, we get paid, right? We have, and that's a good thing, that's always good. We have, are maybe less of an understanding around the financial elements, right? So that business side of things. So that's a difference. Many of you will be working in departments as well that have actual support for any filing of anything that you need, any reimbursements, all of that sort of stuff. We don't in psychology, but many disciplines do and colleges do. So you may not be as hands-on, you may not understand as much around the financial picture as you need to. And I don't mean you can't manage money, we're going to run out of it, that type of thing. It just means that all of the tax structures, all of the incorporation, all of that, the shareholders, all of the, the minute books, all of these types of things that we usually don't touch as academics. So that's a huge curve. And that's not something necessarily that, the floodgates of information are going to come at you. So I would suggest that you take a lot of time. Like I did everything right around that, in terms of becoming incorporated, getting a great lawyer, I did all those things, right? But, building up your financial acumen there and understanding that is exposure to information, that is taking time to do that. And, because when we even get grants at the university, we get the money to us and we know that we just can't run out by year 3. I mean, it's pretty flexible, and easy in that regard to manage. So this is very, very different. There's a lot of things around taxes that you need to understand. And, sometimes in academia, we may not be as good at that because we can be lulled into a sense of security around our jobs and our structures there. And the business world is very, very different. So the more you can bring in there, the better. Also, startup life is, you're going to be hustling. It is busy. And I do feel that you need to, spend some time getting to know people in the ecosystem as well, because there is a lot of support that you can access when you do, and they know you. So building those relationships and networking, that is an issue. And then, just the general highs and lows of being a founder. You know, there are some days, and I've said this before, but there's some days that are exceptionally high. You couldn't be any higher, feeling any better psychologically. You know, and you might be met the next morning, 9 a.m. with something that's really hard hitting. So you learn a lot about yourself as you go through this. How thick is your skin, you know? And are you going to be able to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and keep going? And sometimes just remember this, that things that you think that it means so much to you, but in the general scheme, it's a process. You keep moving forward, you get going, and you find your successes. And I think, you know, it's really fun when you start. It's amazing and incredible when you realize what you built in 2 short years, 2.5, 3 years, how far you've gone and where you're going to go. And I think so many of you in the audience will have that potential, and it's very exciting. And I think as someone from a social science background, non-tech founder, I can do it. Hey, there's a lot of hope in the room. So there we go. Alex, are you there?
She's playing on mine and.
Oh, there you go. Are you okay? Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
we
just
got back.
frozen a bit. Yeah, okay. I hope I'm not freezing up again.
This is a true like technology challenge day.
Yes, well, I certainly loaded that up for everyone there, so I apologize again.
No, that's okay. So the theme, Merle, are we 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Merle says I have 5 minutes.
Okay.
The theme, again, that we sort of we're focusing on today is this idea of pivoting. You have an idea that you think is great. You see a problem. You think you have a solution. And so just to recap from the beginning, you know, originally you were looking at how do people get fair access to pricing information in a food security setting. And today, BetterCart is BetterCart Analytics. That is sort of a data play that is collecting this data and making it available and to the supply chain. So Melanie, can you just maybe we'll spend our last bit of our time here. Can you talk to us about what made you see that you needed to pivot from your original sort of idea, or when did you know that? What made you know that? Just talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge, big issue, huge question. And so, you know, every founder will be different here, but nevertheless, there may come a time when you do pivot, and pivoting is quite common. When I first started, I thought, you know, I was told certainly at co-launch that, you know, what you're doing today is probably not what you're going to end up doing. And I thought, no way, I'm absolutely doing this forever. And so what we did was, you know, what's critical is a path to revenue, right? And fast. You know, you want to be on that revenue rung, and you want that ramp, as they call it, and you want to be, you know, successively moving upward with the accumulation of revenue. So building a consumer web app for us is certainly, you know, it's alive and well. We have thousands of people on it. But nevertheless, it's looking at a B2B, so business to business, SaaS subscription model, essentially, for revenue. So what we do is we package this data. We have a entirely different platform, and then we sell access to the platform. And so this is a bit of a faster path for us. It's still been an absolute massive amount of work to do this. When you pivot, you're saying goodbye to what you knew. You're saying essentially that, you know, for us, because we went from B2C, business to consumer, to B2B, there's a whole realm of information you need to know. You need to learn about that landscape. You need to understand the value you're bringing and the benefit and propositions there. And you have to go and make that happen. So for us, it was less, you know, it was about 1 year and 3 quarters ago, September 2020, that we pivoted. And it was, you know, it's a monumental shift. You're talking to new people. You're not talking to grocery shoppers. You're talking to people, VPs and corporations now. So that was a huge jump and leap for us. the landscape had changed, and bit by bit by bit, the closer you get to your customer, the more you learn and you just hear what they're saying. When they speak about the value, you get that down, you take that and you use that and you keep incorporating it. So it was wild. I also had, a mentor that I was working very closely with, and he is definitely B2B beyond B2B. So, it's just like, well, look, there's probably a great use for this data. And we knew we were always going to do that, but we sped it up. So, and in that came all of the new learning that I needed to do. So it was a little bit like starting over again, and that's tough, but I think that we have the full package, and we are the only ones internationally as well that have the potential to have a consumer platform as well. So eventually the vision will be for us is to take our B2B side and link it with the consumer side and provide consumer-based analytics as well. And, we are thrilled at the prospect of doing that and the value we can bring to people.
I think that's we have a question from the crowd.
Okay.
Dr. Pickle.
Hi, Melanie. Michael Levin. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
You hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. You said your first developer is still with you.
Yes.
Did that person get shares of your company?
Great question. So we haven't raised yet. So we are a bootstrap company, which is pretty amazing, but we're looking to raise this fall. And so far there will be shares that are allotted at that point in time. The CTO has some, but in terms of the employees right now, we're going to be ramping that up when we carve out that space in the cap table. And that what I would suggest around that is you can hear a lot of cautionary tales for founders, that a lot of founders say, well, hey, here's 20%, here's 35%, anybody to come on board with you, but be very slow and steady about that sort of idea, because some people have done that and that developer may have left, 5 months later, and it gets pretty messy at that point. Where you're forced to stay in contact and yet you really want to cut ties, but they're on your cap table legitimately, so legally and so forth. So just hold back if you can until you really know the scope of what you're doing and what that dilution and math will be looking like for you.
Thanks.
You bet.
Kate has a question on the chat, and I said that she can unmute and ask it. So Kate, go ahead.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing your experience with us. I have a question to you more as a professor, because you are still working at USask. So what's like the attitude of, say, your department to you being an entrepreneur? So as long as you fulfill all your academic duties like teaching, research, and administration, can you keep your full-time position at UFS, or there are certain requirements? I'm asking because at my previous institution, which was in the US, they were pushing the faculty founders to part-time positions at the university. So what's the situation here?
Okay, it's a great question, Kate. It's a really, really relevant one too, because I think that the tide is changing. I think courtesy of the work that is being done today, I think courtesy of the work that, will be done through Opus and, with Alex at the helm there, it's going to be phenomenal, because I think what's going to happen is it will be normalized a bit more. So professors will not feel like they are doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So for instance, it's often, I can speak to other people as well outside the University of Saskatchewan, and they'd say, well, lots of people have businesses, companies. That's what we're here to do, move like that and create that intellectual property, get it out there in the world. And then you can be met internally with a bit of resistance, though, in institutions, depending on where you are. So I'm really happy to see that we can speak openly, that we can talk about this. And the thing is as well is that, there's a lot of people in computer science and engineering and medicine that would be doing this all the time, right? But it's very different for people in other disciplines to be doing this, and how that is received, remains to be seen. But nevertheless, I think that, having open forums like this where people can speak about it, I have obligations, I maintain those obligations. And the interesting thing in my case, Kate, is that I'm now able to work with another professor who's known as Canada's food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, and we just published together. So some of the data that the company's provided, is in the journal Food right now, which is impact factor of about 4.5, which is great. And so, so I'm trying to make it work and, and respect the boundaries. But when I can bring something over to benefit the classroom or benefit my student, I will. But you have to hustle because you do have to carve out those separate spaces.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Great question.
Jesus Perez has a question next. Jesus, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask the question, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. My question is related to scaling. Once you started creating revenue, how did you manage the pace that you started scaling, and what have you learned about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, the pace is intense, right? So Jesus, when you start, it's going to be it's very intense. It's very all consuming, right? To Kate's question, you always do, a good job at the university, and the expectations for yourself, they're really high at the university, but you may have to modify them a wee bit. When you're moving here in the startup world and building a company, you move as quickly as you possibly can. Every day counts. So for instance, the university, we may have gotten out at December 6th, right? Really nice. Wrap up those finals. But I'm still going until like literally the 24th of December on the business, you see, and then I would start literally the 26th. So it's a different thing. And you move as efficiently as you can and as fast as you can to scale. If you're going a certain route, you can build a fantastic company that, maybe you're not looking for VC funding. You can do something that you can support yourself, and you're just like, wow, this is a wonderful revenue generator. So it's quite possible that way. But at the beginning, it'll certainly be a lot of hustle, and you need to just call on the people there, get the resources in that you can. And if people want to talk about that ever, I'm learning new things daily, but they're really helpful. Connection between academia and business.
Thank you.
You bet.
Do you want me to close out, Merle? I apologize if I was chatting and didn't leave enough time for questions, because Melanie, and thanks everybody who had a chance to ask. You can always reach out through Merle or me to connect with Melanie further if you have questions. So thanks everybody who came out in person. Thanks everybody who signed on Zoom. And I think that we started the discussion about innovation and entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking and pivoting. And I think this session today is just a perfect example of doing all of those things. So thanks everybody. And you can check out Merle's SURE program websites for other sessions and other opportunities to learn more.
And big thanks to Melanie for pivoting and coming in this way and doing such a great job. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. And if anybody needs any assistance with anything along those lines, and blending even talking about opportunities for students and so on. I mean, it's great to speak to people that are doing this and, how we do it, right? So happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here today, and glad to have the time that we did.